And so, folks, the charade continues. I'm kind of sick of talking about this same topic. Every report that I come and bring you, I seem to be talking about COVID, because it seems to be dominating the world and dominating the headlines. I mean, it's an interesting thing how all the other news seems to have stopped, folks. There's just nothing going on in the world. No terror attacks. All the mass shootings have stopped in the United States. Of course, there was a mass shooting in Canada recently that barely even made the headlines compared to the COVID news. And that was, of course, right on cue when the people of Canada were starting to get incredibly annoyed about the lockdown. And, of course, we can't have them being armed and wanting to do something about their oppression. So it seems to be a good time to stage a shooting in Canada to begin the process to remove the Canadians of their guns. We can't have people being in a position where they may be able to fight back after all, can we? That's just not what the government wants, folks. And they're talking about extending the lockdown in places, even though there's no real pandemic happening. I mean, so many doctors are speaking out now. So many people are becoming aware that the hospitals are all empty. We're even seeing reports put out in the newspapers here about why people believe conspiracy theories. Quite remarkable, you know, how there's all these ridiculous conspiracy theories that the hospitals are empty and all sorts of stuff, you know, and it's everything that's true. But it shows that they're desperate to try and control the narrative and to stop people looking at what's happening. The interview with Judy Mikovits, I was calling her Mikovits the other day, it's actually Mikovits, I believe. The interview with Judy Mikovits was very revealing and has really reached a lot of people. They got 5.6 million views in one day on YouTube before YouTube deleted it. Someone mirrored it and it got, I think, 3.5 million views on their channel before it was deleted again. And everywhere it's been posted, I think it's been deleted by YouTube. But I posted it to BitChute. It's had about 50,000 views or something so far on BitChute since I posted it last night. A little bit more than 50,000, so that's good. It's getting out to people. Interestingly, when you go to the Wikipedia page for Judy Mikovits, a couple of days ago, I mean, it had a glowing report about her character and all the stuff that she'd done. And then on May 7th, the page was updated. And now it seems to just be slandering her. Funny how that happens right on cue. Ministry of Truth gets in there, folks, and changes the narrative. Now you ask why they wanted to put everything online and get rid of the books and get rid of the libraries, folks. It's so they can change the narrative. That's how the Ministry of Truth works, which is basically what the media has become. And of course that's a reference to 1984. If no one's read 1984, George Orwell, I do suggest that you go and read it. But like I said, they're talking about extending the lockdown, folks. Scotland is saying that we need to extend the lockdown. The UK is saying they are going to review the lockdown every 2 weeks, I believe. Remember, it was just going to be for 2 weeks? That was the whole plan, remember? Keep us in quarantine for 2 weeks so that this terrible pandemic doesn't spread. And now they're reviewing that every 2 weeks. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? You know? Makes a lot of sense, folks. And they're bringing in more testing. They've got all these new test kits that they want to use here in Australia. How reliable do you think these test kits are, folks? I'm sure a lot of people out there have seen the report that came out from Tanzania where they tried the test kits on goats and they got positive results. They tried them on pawpaws and they got positive results. I've even heard one report that they tried it on engine oil. They got a positive COVID result. So do you think that they might be putting positive results in the tests, folks? Do you somehow think that that's what's going on? Because the president of Tanzania had the feeling that he was being scanned and they were being set up to find false positives. And apparently they're saying like 80% of the test that comes back are false positives. Folks, when you get 80% false positives on your test, then you don't have a test. It's ridiculous. It's almost like saying, if you test positive for this, it's a pretty good indication that you don't have it. That's how bad the tests are. And even I think the test they're using, the guy who invented that test said you should not use this test to look for infections. That's not how the test works. It simply looks for genetic markers. It simply looks for antibodies. It's not a test for infection. The guy who invented it said that, folks. I'm trying to get out of the wind here for you. But there's so much stuff coming out with Gates and Fauci, and everyone can see that they've been colluding together. Everyone can see that Gates has got his finger in so many pies, it's just ridiculous. And even with Bill HR 874, the Coronavirus Action Response Emergency, whatever it's called, I don't know, the CARE bill. That was actually drafted in January 2019, folks. It wasn't passed into law until 2020, but it was drafted and introduced in January 2019. The Coronavirus Action Response Plan, whatever CARE stands for. I'll have to go and look it up. But if you think this isn't planned, folks, what were they doing drafting that response plan in January when the virus hadn't even been heard of until November? And then you had Bill Gates running Event 201. The whole simulation of what they would do if there was a major coronavirus outbreak. 6 weeks before there was a major coronavirus outbreak. So, I don't know how much evidence people need that this whole thing has been a setup. And remember a couple of reports ago, I showed you the guy from the UN, or the guy from the WHO, the WHO, saying that, they might have to start removing people from their homes because now they're finding that coronavirus is transferred from the towns and transferred from being out in the public. It's now in the home, and they may have to start going into people's homes and start removing people from their homes.
In most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
When you think about it, folks, they're going to remove people who test positive from their homes, and yet the coronavirus test kits are testing pawpaws positive, are testing goats positive, testing basically anything you want to come out as positive. They'll test positive for you, and then you can remove it from its home. And people say, well, that would never happen here. Well, now it's actually being introduced in Ventura County, just north of LA, folks, and you can bet your bottom dollar that it isn't just Ventura County that is doing this.
We are beginning a program today which will certainly grow into something larger and larger, and that is a community contact tracing program. We've done contact tracing all along. That a contact is a person who's been exposed to someone that we document to have the COVID infection. When we find someone who has a COVID infection, those people are immediately isolated. But we also work with them to figure out who their contacts were. But the purpose of this program is to bring on people. We may bring on up to 50 or even more as the program grows and as we see the needs for it. As we do more testing, we will find more and more people who have COVID-19. And again, we'll isolate every one of them, and we will find every one of their contacts, and we will make sure that they stay quarantined, and we'll check in with them every day. We're going to do a more complete job, and we're going to do a more meticulous job of making it less and less possible for others in the county to run into someone with COVID-19 infection. It's not just our county. There are going to be thousands of people hired who will be these contact investigators throughout the state. And this is occurring in many, many other states as well, perhaps all of the states in our country. We will be giving intensive training to these people, identifying and finding contacts. Some of the people we find are going to have trouble being isolated. For instance, if they live in a home where there's only one bathroom and there are 3 or 4 other people living there, and those people don't have COVID infection, we're not going to be able to keep the person in that home. Every person who we're isolating, for instance, needs to have their own bathroom. And so we'll be moving people like this into other kinds of housing that we have available.
Yeah, so you heard what they said, people. They're going to, if you have COVID and other people in your household do not, if you cannot isolate properly, they're just going to take you up out of the house. Or if it's your child that has COVID-19, they're going to try to take your child and take them to God knows where, possibly FEMA camps or something. So he's saying this is about to start all over the country. Watch the video and listen and pay attention. Have a great night, everybody. Bye.
Talking about removing people from their homes. As I said, folks, they're coming for your children. You know, if they can go into your home and they can just say, well, 3 people in this household have tested positive for COVID-19 and you only have 1 bathroom and you've got 4 people living in your home, so we're going to have to remove 3 of the people from your home because they need to have their own bathroom. You know, this is the excuses that they're making up, folks, but this is happening right now in the United States. So, you know, as I've said before, the United States is really the prize in all of this. Now, sure, they want to bring down Europe. They're going to depopulate a lot of the world. They want to bring in a police state everywhere. But the United States, land of the free, home of the brave, doesn't seem to be too many brave people there at the moment. And the freedom, well, that is fast disappearing. It doesn't seem to be the land of the free anymore. So they need to bring the United States down. You know, if they can manage to bring down the United States, then the rest of the world will fall quite easily. You know, the United States has already been, you know, it's always been promoted to the world as the bastion of freedom. And a lot of the world has that opinion of the United States, and even the people in the United States generally have that opinion of themselves, that they're the land of the free. You know, I've got my guns, if you ever come for me, well, you know, from my cold dead hands, as was it Charlton Heston said. And that's kind of the attitude. So they really need to bring the United States down. The way they're going to do it is with the supply chains, breaking down the supply chains. That's why I've been focusing on that so much. You know, and even with wanting to bring doctors onto the show, like I wanted to bring on Dr. Kaufman and have a talk to Dr. Kaufman. I'd like to bring on Judy Mikovits and have a talk to her. But again, with all of these things, what we find is that we're getting stuck in the details again. I mean, honestly, the information that Dr. Kaufman has brought to the world is out there. The information that Judy Mikovits has brought to the world is out there. And through all of this, you know, by even interviewing these people, which, you know, I'd like to do, because people need the information, but like I said, it's already out there. So you've got to wonder, you know, do we risk getting tied up in the details again, the way we've done with so many other things? With 9/11, everyone's arguing, was it thermite, was it micro-nukes, was it this, was it that? Rather than simply focusing on the fact that it wasn't what the government said it was. That should have been the issue. And it's the same with this, you know, this pandemic is not what we're being told it is. You know, this lockdown is not being done for the reasons that we're being told it is, and the real danger of what's happening is the supply chains are being destroyed, and that needs to be the focus, because that's what this is all about. See, they can keep us arguing over the details, arguing over whether this person's controlled opposition or whether that person's controlled opposition, or whether we should believe what this person says about viruses, or what this doctor says, or what this nurse says, or what that nurse says, or who's right and who's disinformation and who's this and who's that. And we can talk about all of this stuff all we want, but in the meantime, the supply chains aren't back up and running. These food chains aren't coming back online. You know, the food is not flowing. The cattle are not getting to market. The vegetables are still being ploughed into the ground. You know, things aren't going back to normal, and they're not going to go back to normal until we get this looked at, until we get some focus on this. You know, and we've got to look at the bigger picture. For all these things, folks, we've always got to keep focus on the bigger picture. You know, they don't care how much is exposed with this now. Even with the stuff that's going on with Bill Gates. I mean, he did some talk about, back in April, addressing the attacks, and he said, oh, well, you know, there'll always be conspiracy theories. He did a talk that was on Chinese or Japanese TV. It might have been Chinese. It might have been Japanese. But I'll find the link and I'll put it below. I might include a little bit of it here.
我注意到，在美国也会有一些网友甚至攻击您，说病毒是从您疫苗的这个研制过程中出来的。您在用什么样的心态面对这种声音？
I'd say it's an ironic if you take somebody who's doing their best to get the world ready and, you know, putting, in my case, billions of dollars into these tools for infectious diseases and really trying to solve broadly infectious diseases, including those that can cause pandemics. But that, you know, we're in a crazy situation, so there's going to be crazy rumors. I hope, whether it's individuals or countries, that in some ways this shows us how interdependent we are. That to stop a global pandemic, we need to find whoever's the best, whatever the best vaccine construct are, the best drugs, and we need to make it without just focusing on one country. We need to make it for the entire world, including for countries that don't have the resources to pay for vaccine research or vaccine factories. You know, they're actually, in many ways, should be the priority for what we do. So, you know, you know, there's lots of attacks out there. In general, people have been very positive.
But he didn't address any of the accusations. He just kind of skirted the question and sort of talked around it and didn't actually say anything. You know, but even with all of this stuff coming out now, even the connections that Gates has got to Fauci and all the stuff we're learning about, I mean, it's all very well. And it's all very well to talk about it, and it's all very well to get it out into the public, but it's got to the point where I don't even think they care if people know about this stuff now, because the damage is mostly already done. You know, the supply chains have already broken down, and even if things were to go back to normal right now and all the planes were to start flying and things were to start flowing again, there's going to be so many businesses go down. There's going to be so many people suffer. As I said on my last report, already, you know, the suicide rates are higher than the deaths by COVID or deaths with COVID. And it's important to see this in the narrative when the media talks about it, how people with COVID-19 die. They're not saying they're dying of COVID-19. They're not saying they're dying of coronavirus. They're dying with coronavirus. It's the same as someone dying with a broken leg or dying with a headache or dying with a t-shirt on. You know, it doesn't mean they died from having the t-shirt on. If someone died with COVID-19, it doesn't mean they died of COVID-19. And they've told you in their own reports that that's how they're categorising. And there's even that one idiot, that woman from the United States, who was saying that she's disappointed that some people are not categorising some deaths as COVID deaths when they should be. They're saying, oh, you know, if someone comes in and they got stage 5 cancer and they die of stage 5 cancer, but they happen to have COVID, then it should be put down as a COVID death.
There are other countries that if you had a pre-existing condition, and let's say the virus caused you to go to the ICU and then have a heart or kidney problem, some countries are recording that as a heart issue or a kidney issue and not a COVID-19 death. Right now, we're still recording it, and we'll I mean, the great thing about having forms that come in and a form that has the ability to mark it as COVID-19 infection, the intent is right now that if someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that.
If someone dies with COVID-19, we are counting that.
Anyone who has COVID when they pass away will be included in that category. Dr. Ngozi Ezike explained this does not mean the virus caused that death, but if someone does test positive for COVID before dying, that is classified a coronavirus fatality.
You were in hospice and had already been given, a few weeks to live, and then you also were found to have COVID, that would be counted as a COVID death. It means that even if you died of a clear alternate cause, but you had COVID at the same time, it's still listed as a COVID death. So everyone who's listed as a COVID death doesn't mean that that was the cause of the death, but they had COVID at the time of death.
How does this work? They died of stage 5 cancer. I mean, just because they had that, like I said, it's like, if someone goes in there and they've got stage 5 cancer and they're on death's bed, but they happen to break their leg on the way into the hospital, are you going to put down they died of a broken leg because they happen to die with a broken leg? It's the same thing. They go in there with stage 5 cancer, they're about to die, but they test positive for COVID-19 with these tests that will test a poor positive. And then they say, oh, well, they died with COVID, so it must be a COVID death. That's how come you can have reports going, like coming out in England, where they're saying, oh, another 630 people died this week with COVID. It's a scam, folks. They didn't die of COVID, they died with COVID. And like I said, nothing else is going on except for that shooting to disarm the Canadian people. Here it is, folks. Coronavirus. I'm dying. I need to call the medics. The crows agree with me anyway. A lot of crows in this park, isn't there? They seem to follow me around, which is a weird thing. I never picked the crow as a totem. It kind of picked me. Even with the crow house and all that, it wasn't even me that chose that name. It's a weird thing how it all happened. But anyway, strange how life works like that. But there is a positive to all this, folks. Perhaps people will wake up to how much they're being played. And you can tell that the politicians are just mouthpieces and puppets as well. You really can. I'm trying to keep out of the wind for you here, folks. I'll get to a less windy place hopefully in a minute. Wind wasn't here when I first arrived. But you can tell that like Donald Trump at the start, when he was saying, oh, this is just going to be a bad flu, it's not going to be any worse than the flu. You had Boris Johnson. He didn't really want to lock the place down. You could tell he was being told to, and because he was a naughty boy and didn't lock it down when they told him to, they said, well, now you've got to play sick as well and go to hospital for a couple of weeks and go into solitary confinement. And you can see even with Scott Morrison here in Australia, he looked like he was thinking, wow, do you really want me to do this? He looked like he was being pushed into it from forces high above. That's what it looked like. It didn't look like he wanted to do it. So, like I've said, you can think of the whole world as one big department store, one big people farm, different ranches, different corrals, with different people running those different corrals, but ultimately it's all run by one controlling hand at the top. And these people are just puppets and mouthpieces, and they all do what they're told. And if you ever doubt that, really all you've got to do is look at the way these people reacted and the way these particular leaders went about shutting their countries down. They didn't look like they actually wanted to do it. Because a lot of politicians are idiots. You've got to understand that. These people are not real bright folks. They get in there and they do what they're told. And it's all compartmentalised. Half of them don't have a clue what's going on. I mean, we blame the politicians for all the corruption, but really it's the hand that guides the politicians. And I think the media is even more corrupt than the politicians. I mean, the media are the ones who control the narrative. The media can make or break any politician. It's like Malcolm X said, if you're not careful, the newspapers will have you cheering on the oppressor and hating the oppressed. And it's very much like that. So it really shows that there's a bigger hand behind all this. Now, as we've been figuring out, folks, all roads lead to Bill Gates. I mean, Bill Gates has set himself up as a philanthropist through all these documentaries he made about himself that he funded. He runs the World Health Organization. He runs the BBC, he controls the narrative there. He controls the narrative of the Guardian newspaper. He controls the narrative of Imperial College. Again, Neil Ferguson having to resign because he snuck out and had an affair with a married woman. I mean, this is the guy who's not even following his own social distancing guidelines, and not only that, but he's got no morals. He's going out and having an affair with a married woman anyway. I mean, this is a great guy. You want to have in control of world health and dictating what happens in your country, isn't it? This psychopath Bill Gates, and just the fact, like I said on the last report, just the fact that ScoMo is even liaising with this moron, this idiot. He's not a doctor. Again, people like David Noakes doing like 2 years in jail, then they want to extradite him to France because he's been curing people of stage 5 cancer with GC-MAF. And yet they want to put him in jail because you're offering medical practices and you're not a doctor. You're offering medical advice when you're not a doctor. And here's Bill Gates basically running the entire world medical situation, the entire World Health Organization, and he ain't no doctor. I'm definitely COVID, folks. I'm definitely dying. I think I need to go and get tested, get this tracing app on my phone so the government knows where I am every moment of every day, and so they have the chance to come and repossess me and put me somewhere safe where I won't infect anybody due to having my own bathroom. Figure that one out. Governments, they're just incredible with the stuff they come up with, these governments. They really are absolutely incredible. It was actually said by Sydney Criminal Lawyers. There's a website called Sydney Criminal Lawyers. I think that's quite a fitting title since most lawyers are criminals. So I'm kind of wondering what they mean by the title, whether they're pointing the finger at themselves or whether they're just... Anyway, I'll let that one go for your own imagination. But they are informing us that we should not trust the PM. We should not trust the Prime Minister when he says that the data that's kept and used during this whole coronavirus tracing situation, that all of this data will be thrown away. The police won't get it. It won't be used for any type of nefarious purposes. It's just for while we're doing this coronavirus situation. While we're in this situation, we need this just so we can make sure no one's spreading the virus, but we're not going to keep any of the data. We're going to throw it all away once the crisis is ended. And of course, Sydney Criminal Lawyers are saying, well, we don't think you should trust the Prime Minister when he says this. And of course, why would we trust the Prime Minister anyway? I mean, he's the guy who's pushed this entire fake pandemic. He's in bed with Bill Gates and taking the advice of this megalomaniacal psychopath. I mean, there's a petition going to have Bill Gates arrested and tried for crimes against humanity. I think it's got about 500,000 signatures on that petition now. And apparently it's a White House petition, and you only need to get 100,000 signatures in order for them to look into something. So it'd be interesting to see if they actually look into this, folks, because there's around about 500,000, almost 500,000 last time I looked at that petition. So it'd be interesting to see what they do with that, folks. So that's the guy that our Prime Minister is hanging out with and supporting and wanting to get on board with his vaccine. So, no, why would we trust this guy? Why would we trust this megalomaniacal psychopath, this treasonous cretin that is Scott Morrison? As I said before, folks, all of these people in Canberra need to be taken, they need to be tried, and they need to be prosecuted for treason for what they've done during this pandemic. And no, this isn't mismanagement, it isn't even dereliction of duty. They are simply things that we could use. They're simply phrases we could use to maybe rally the Australian people. This isn't dereliction of duty. This has been done deliberately. And that's the worst part about it. It's the most difficult part for people to comprehend, to really believe that this guy, Scott Morrison, he's just doing what he is told by his globalist masters. He's just a puppet. And what this is about, again, is depopulation and starvation. That's the danger that we're facing, and that is the danger of what's happening in the United States. Now, the United States is in a very, very serious situation, because if the United States falls, we all fall. You know, we've got a little bit of a better food situation here, in as much as we've got less population to worry about. You've got hundreds of millions of people in the United States. You got, what is it, 260 million or 360 million or something? I can't remember what the last count was. But that's a lot of people in the United States. We've got 26, 27 million people here in Australia. Now, we can get through this, you know, and we've got a lot of edible tucker in the bush. We can get through this, but the United States, there's a lot of people to feed there. And when it all turns pear-shaped and they start, you know, coming and culling the population by removing people from their households because they say, oh, you know, this person's got COVID. What are you going to do, folks, if they take one of your loved ones away from your family and they say, oh, we've got to take them because they've got COVID? Then they can tell you anything. Oh no, well, they died. They died of COVID. They tested positive for COVID and then they died. You know, because we took them to the hospital, we put them on a ventilator and we killed them. Because that's what they're doing, folks. And then, of course, you can't see the body because it's an infected body. It may have the virus. So you can't bury it, you can't have a funeral. You just have a funeral there, but you don't get to see the body. It's got to be a sealed casket. How do you even know it's there? How do you know these people are even dying? How do you know what they're doing with these people? And again, I'd like to know what happened to the 1.5 million people that got relocated in the Australian bushfires. You know, we saw news footage of people getting loaded onto Navy ships. I didn't see any news footage of these people coming off the Navy ships. Where did these Navy ships go? Where were these people taken to? You know, I hear reports of a few families here and there that are, you know, beginning lawsuits against the government because the government hasn't come through with its care packages and its aid the way it promised, which is nothing surprising for any government. But what happened to the majority of these people? And what's happening to all these COVID patients that are allegedly disappearing, all these alleged COVID patients that are allegedly dying? Where are they really going? What are they really dying of? And what are they doing with the bodies of all of these people? You know, nothing with this adds up, folks. You know, if you can think of this as being a people farm, and you wanted to cull the herd without the herd knowing, how could you do that? How could you selectively go and harvest people from various towns and communities without the rest of the community knowing what you're doing or getting up in arms about it? Well, you could tell people they are infected. You could set up a scenario quite like this, have everybody locked in their homes, tell people they are infected and just start selectively removing people from society, tell the rest of the world that they disappeared, they died, whatever. If the family members are up in arms about it and want proof or correlation of anything you say, well, you know, they'll go away. The media will control the narrative. The media always controls the narrative. You know, one of the most important things we can do, folks, is, well, yeah, spreading information about what these face masks are doing and what they're all really about. You know, they're just about making people sick. That helps. But we have to push back, and we have to get the supply chains back up and running. If we don't do that, then, you know, I would suggest that people find a safe place to try to wait this out and sit this out and get themselves a good store of food and get themselves a good knowledge of bush law, you know, because pretty soon you're not going to be able to do anything if you don't comply with any of this narrative. You know, if you haven't got the app on your phone or you haven't got the vaccination mark or any of this stuff, you know, unless we can really bring a lot of attention to what Bill Gates is doing and bring a lot of attention to what this is really all about, unless we can rise up now and, you know, call these criminals out for what they are, these politicians, and you know, unless we can do that now, we're going to be heading for a pretty dark future. And we've got to be really careful how we do it as well. I mean, like I've said, people could get all their guns. They could just go to the White House and say, hey, you guys have to leave now or you're going to be in a world of pain. And we don't even want to fire a shot. We're just going to tell you that you have to leave now. I reckon if people did that, you'd have a lot of people in the military and police break ranks. We've already seen police breaking ranks. There was one cop who did a wonderful speech in a car saying that he's really not prepared to step outside the Constitution, and he requests that a lot of his police brothers do the same thing. I think we're going to see a lot of this with the military as well. I think we're going to see a lot of people break ranks. You know, what's important is that in the pushback that people do, that it's not violent. I mean, even when I said, armed convoys guarding food supply trains and stuff like this, yeah, you do that, you do it armed so they can't stop you, but you don't get violent and fire a shot, because when you fire a shot, as soon as someone fires a shot at a cop or a military or something like that, they're just waiting for that. They'll just keep pushing. They'll just keep squeezing and squeezing and squeezing. Eventually there'll be people in the supermarket that speak out in the lines like I do, and there'll be security guards there, and they'll just pick me out of the line and I'll disappear. They'll just keep pushing, and then they'll see who pokes their head up and finally complains about this. When is this going to stop? I'll say, well, you come over here and talk to us, and then that person will disappear. And this discourages other people from speaking out as well. And when they disappear, they'll just disappear. The families can complain about it all they want. If they complain too much, well, they'll disconnect their internet access and they won't be able to complain, because that'll be the only form of communication now. And then they can turn their credit cards off. Then they'll become outcasts in society. They'll be shunned by the rest of society because they may be infected. How they can play this, folks, people will just start disappearing the tighter they squeeze it, because that's when people, ordinary people will start complaining and they'll get picked out and picked off. So we've got to push back, but it's got to be done in the right way, and it's got to be done now before people get too locked into that, and before people get too brainwashed. I mean, if they're not too brainwashed already, but once it gets to the point where they can pick you out of a line in the supermarket because you're not wearing a mask and you're saying, hey, this is for my health and I think what you're doing is wrong, well, they can pick you out. And, the other people in the line will start talking and saying, well, it was right that they took that guy out. He could have been infected. Once it gets to that point, then we're lost. So, we've got to get to it now before it gets to that point. People have to start pushing back in the right way. They've got to start ignoring the lockdown, but it can't be done in a violent way. And we've got to have the focus put on the food supply and getting this back up and running, most especially in the United States. Like I said, the United States is the real prize in this. I mean, they'll lock down Europe, they'll depopulate a lot of Europe, they'll depopulate a lot of here, they'll get to lock us all down, the UK as well, Ireland, Scotland, the whole lot. But they need to completely destroy the United States. And by getting the United States so dependent on, food being run the way it was, and then shutting all that down, you can't just shut it down and expect things to ever go back to normal, folks. So, the United States really needs to pay attention. The people of the United States really need to pay attention and stop arguing over the details. Stop arguing over whether you believe Dr. Kaufman or whether you believe that Judy Mikovits is an agent because she's saying she isolated the AIDS viruses and viruses don't exist. And put all your belief systems down, folks. Stop arguing over details. The common thread that all these doctors are saying is that this pandemic is a lie. That needs to be the focus. We can prove it's a lie. We can prove all the numbers are being fudged. We can prove they're inflating the numbers. We can prove that they're labelling anybody who dies as being COVID patients by their own words. So we need to get some focus on that. Stop arguing over the details and wake people up to the fact that what we're seeing here is economic terrorism that is being waged against us by our own governments. And the implications of this are absolutely profound, and they're all working together to do it all together in one fell swoop right around the world. So if you ever needed proof that all the governments work together, folks, well, this pandemic is all the proof you ever needed. But anyway, folks, I'll leave it there for now. It's nice to come and do these talks. It's nice to come to these spots and show you these places out here in the country. But yeah, reviewing things every 2 weeks and keeping this lockdown going with everything that we know, and they're only going to continue doing it for as long as we continue to allow it. So yeah, spread information, folks, share information, and stay safe. Look after yourselves. And thank you to all the people who send me, all the emails you send me. There was some other stuff I'm sure I wanted to talk about, but I can't remember what it was. I always forget stuff when I come to these places. But I'll bring you another report in the next day or two. I've got to do an interview tonight. I've got a couple of interviews actually this afternoon I have to do, so And I'm also, as I mentioned before, I'm speaking at AV11 this Sunday, which will be a live stream. 2 a.m. Australian time, 5 p.m. in the afternoon UK time, but I think AV11 starts tomorrow. Probably starts pretty well as I'm uploading this video, getting pretty close to when I'm uploading this. It should be starting. And Ian Crane is safe and well out of hospital, which is really, really great to see. Good on him. And yeah, so I'll be speaking there this weekend as well. And I've got a couple of interviews, and I'll bring you another report like this as soon as I'm able. And I'll try to write things down so I remember what it is I want to say when I come. I just get a little vague, folks. You know, and like I said, I'm kind of sick of talking about COVID, but it's dominating the news. I mean, everything that's happening at the moment is COVID related. You know, even the shooting in Canada was COVID related. It's about disarming the people so they can't push back against COVID, you know, against the narrative, against what the government's doing. You know, why they built the fence here in Parliament House, around Parliament House a couple of years ago. You know what that was all about for now, folks. I mean, it's for this, so they can deal with this. I've got to get out of the wind anyway. It's getting a bit windy, so I'll leave it there. Otherwise, I'll just go back onto another topic, and this will be a video that goes for hours. So I'll leave it there. Thank you to all the people who send me so many kind emails. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. And again, if I disappear off YouTube, folks, like I've disappeared off Facebook, you'll find me on BitChute, you'll find me on Library. And now for those people who used to contact me through Facebook, you can contact me through MeWe, through Minds, through Twitter, or just through my website, thecrowhouse.com. You can go there and you can drop me a message through the contact form there, even though I'm getting inundated with emails. And I can't possibly answer all the emails that I'm getting, folks. I'm sorry, it's just not possible for one man to be able to answer all this stuff and deal with this sort of overload of information that's coming in. So I do appreciate them. I do appreciate you emailing me, and I do appreciate the support you show me and the kind words you give me, but I just cannot possibly answer all these emails at the moment. So please, I hope that I have your understanding in that. But anyway, folks, I'll leave it there. Thank you for joining me on this report today down here with the birds, and I'll look forward to speaking to you again soon. Please take very good care until then. In Lakesh.
Siamo alla vigilia del 25 aprile e occorre essere uniti contro le dittature e uniti nella verità. Non facciamo di questa l'aula della menzogna. Non il 26 febbraio, ma il 9 marzo, la scienza qua evocata, diceva che il virus era poco più che un'influenza. Quella scienza è quella a cui si è ispirato questo governo. È detto, è stato detto, è documentato, è stato detto, non mentite. Allora dite la verità, non fate di questa l'aula della menzogna. Almeno qui si applica il principio di Giambattista Vico, verum ipsum factum. E allora avete sentito e avete dato i numeri, li voglio dare anch'io, no Dattis, no Pagani, non dite anche qui 25.000 morti, non è vero, non usate i morti per retorica e per terrorismo. I dati dell'Istituto Superiore della Sanità dicono che il 96,3% sono morti per altre patologie. Esattamente i dati, i numeri, dice questo, è la verità, è la verità.
Colleghi,
valli a leggere,
collega.
esattamente così, li ho letti tutti. Il 60% sono morti per altre patologie, detto dall'Istituto Superiore della Sanità. Se non lo sai, studia.
Collega Sgarbi, si rivolga. Collega Sgarbi, collega Trizzino. Collega Sgarbi si rivolga alla Presidenza.
Sono i contagiati e mentre in Italia la zona rossa, qui tutti erano senza mascherine. Oggi Basini è accusato perché la deve portare per forza. Siete ridicoli, non l'avete portata fino all'altro ieri. È esattamente così. In Germania economia, sanità e scuola il 4 maggio funzioneranno perfettamente. Siamo uno Stato con minori diritti nell'Europa. Germania ha dato prove di forza e di risposta giusta. Noi qui siamo umiliati ancora una volta dalla Germania, anche nella malattia. Abbiamo chiuso il 60% delle imprese. Io do dei dati, caro Trizzino, valli a verificare. Allora, è chiaro che io fui il primo a chiedere la chiusura del Parlamento. Oggi siamo qua, tutti mascherati. L'altra volta c'era soltanto dell'unto, c'erano pochissimi dall'osso, erano pochi che portavano la mascherina. Oggi si è additati se non la si porta. Ebbene, proprio perché la verità è la cosa più importante, diamo i numeri reali. Non dobbiamo mentire, ci sono certamente dei dati forti. Li leggo anche qua, Trizzino. Il 56% in Lombardia, il 14% in Emilia, l'8% in Piemonte, il 5% in Veneto. Non possiamo immaginare di applicare delle norme unitarie con zone così disparate di epidemia. E allora dico, almeno qui diciamo la verità. Misuriamoci con la Germania, siamo uniti nella liberazione contro l'ipocrisia e le menzogne, contro le falsificazioni, contro i falsi numeri che vengono dati per terrorizzare gli italiani. I 25.000 morti, lo diceva il professor Bassetti, sono morti di infarto, di cancro, di altre patologie. Non usiamoli per umiliare l'Italia, non usiamoli per dare ai cittadini false notizie. Date i numeri, controllateli e sfido in giurì d'onore te, Trizzino, a guardare i numeri.
Collega Sgarbi, si rivolga alla Presidenza.
Ho semplicemente detto che i numeri li danno tutti, ma non diano numeri falsi. Non sono morte in Italia 25.000 persone di coronavirus. Non è vero. È un modo per terrorizzare gli italiani e imporre una dittatura del consenso. È ridicolo.